Sometimes to start a conversation of inclusion,
we have to acknowledge who has been previously excluded.
Whether you were the one being exclusive or not.
Acknowledge its existence.
Don't feel guilty, feel a responsibility.
Not responsible for what was done then,
but responsible for what can be done now.
I am different.
I am different.
I am different.
I am different. That doesn't mean my voice can be dismissed.
My voice matters.
Ask me about myself.
Not my group. Not who I represent.
But me.
Because that is all I know how to be.
If you want to know me.
Don't assume or presume anything.
Hear my stories, and I can hear yours.
Because a humanity whole means a humanity heard.
Every face, every culture.
Every race.
Every color.
Every code.
Every soul.
Together.
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 We make the earth whole.
I am part of this conversation.
I am a part of this conversation.
I am a part of this conversation.
And you are too.
These stories are ours.
So please.
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 Hold a space for us to be.
It is hard enough to share a painful experience which I have lived.
It will be far more difficult
to also try to convince you it happened.
Please, don't make us do that.
Listen and receive us.
Seek to understand.
We welcome you to the conversation.
Karibu ni awashtenliwe.
We welcome you to the conversation.
Мы приветствуем вас в разговоре.
We welcome you to this conversation.
Bem-vindo à conversa.
We welcome you to the conversation. We welcome you to the conversation.
Te damos la bienvenida a la conversación.
We welcome you to the conversation.
We are talking about bias and prejudice, and oftentimes those terms get very misconstrued. So we were just wondering if you can define those to kind of help with the confusion.
Absolutely. So bias can often be a leaning towards something, which can mean that our minds are actually not open to new information. So when I have a bias towards someone or something, I've already made some decisions about that, or I have some thoughts about that that are informing how I'm going to feel. Each and every one of us holds bias. We use bias all day long in all of our interactions and relationships. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but normally when we're exercising it towards the negative bent.
Similarly, how would you define prejudice?
So prejudice is very similar, but prejudice definitely negatively prejudges a person or a situation that causes harm, undue harm to a certain person or group. So prejudice is different than bias. It is almost always going to be a negative prejudice towards someone or something, and it causes harm to a person or group.
How do you think those two terms relate to the term of racism? And do you think that people of color, do you think that they can be racist?
So that's a question that's really contentious for a lot of people as we're talking about race. I would say racism is a belief that because of your race, you are superior to a person of a different race. The added definition that I think makes this argument come really into the light is that it's built on systems. So racist systems are systems that are built on the fact that one person, because of their race, is superior and another group is inferior. That systemic nature of racism that we face in the United States would not be something that a person of color could exercise against a white person per se. They could be prejudiced or biased towards another group, including white people, but they cannot, by definition, structurally hold power that allows them to be racist in a way that affects that group the same racism does.
Light jigger, dark jigger, faux jigger, real jigger, rich jigger, po jigger, house jigger, field jigger, still jigger, still jigger. I like that second one. Light jigger, dark jigger, faux jigger.
How cultures are built on a scapegoat mechanism, and essentially what it is he's like, any culture, any group, any community, you can trace back in initial violence, and the way that this community began was on an initial and inherent violence that started or was at the root or the origin of this community. And essentially what has sustained this community is the ritualizing of that violence. And it's in the psyche, and essentially what happens in these communities is that what unifies a people group is the scapegoating of another, the choosing one to sacrifice, to point at, to exclude, to be violent towards or violent against. Isolation happens inherently because scapegoats are isolated. If you are the scapegoat, you don't have a community behind you. By definition, you are the one that's being pointed, singled out, victimized, oppressed, whatever the language is. But yeah, so there's this deep sense of distress that comes by way of isolation. Disempowerment, it's exactly that, because the scapegoat mechanism only works if the scapegoat is disempowered. The way disempowerment works, it's so much more than making someone feel as though they don't have power. It's making someone believe that you cannot gain power. The colonizing of the psyche, and that's kind of how disempowerment works. It's when someone can get in your head and say you can't accomplish, you can't believe, you can't achieve. A lot of the slaves were released. A lot of them were like, well, we can't, how are we gonna, we don't even believe like we can dream. And so that was like the real victory, and that's what disempowerment does. A lot of times I think a lot about what I'm gonna say before I'm gonna say it. Because I've always, in other settings, even at the school, had to second guess my voice, and that second guessing is a form of disempowerment. A lot of people tend to have my voice belongs here, my presence, I deserve to be here, I get to go here, I get to say what I want and think the way that I think and feel the way. But I think as a female of color, that is not a luxury that I can afford, and I think a lot of times I am second guessing myself, and all of that is disempowerment. I do not feel empowered to just say or have a voice, or if my voice is there, like that it's earned the right to be there. When I was a little girl, birds used to crash in my window all the time, and I would like get a box and like save them and like get leaves and try to like bring them back to life. And the birds wouldn't always live. Sometimes they would, and they'd fly around the house. My mom would be livid. But other times they would die, and it would be so sad. And my mom, like, she would look at me like, why are you bringing this bird in? And the thing is that in those moments, like, when the bird dies, you don't blame the bird for dying. You blame the person who brought the bird in and created an unsuitable environment for the bird to thrive in. Or survive in, I should say, not even thrive. That happens next. But and that's the problem with scapegoat mechanism inherently, is that we bring students into this community of Multnomah, whether it is athletes, students of color, women of color or not, and don't create an environment in which our faculty looks like that, or our staff always looks like that, or the sermons at chapel are to this audience, and then we question why they die, and it's not the bird's fault. It's that we didn't create an environment that was suitable for those people to thrive in.
You know, my skin's brown, so automatically you get seen differently. His skin's black, exact same thing. So they see us coming from another place. But I feel like the most I felt it, or felt it, was here at MU, our freshman year. He was a transfer, and I was a freshman. And there's a reason why we always hanging out together. We're always together, because it was basically me and him, like the entire year, our freshman year. I don't know how to act, I don't know how to be, can I speak Spanish? And it didn't help that one of my coaches didn't allow us to speak Spanish. He would tell us, like, when we're in the team, when I'm here, you can't speak Spanish because I feel like you're talking smack about me. When you have your own coach, like somebody that brought you here, you didn't tell you that, you're just like, whoa, like I have to adapt now. Coach recruited people that were like him, you know, so it was really, really, really hard to like get to know him. You know, I can't even use my cultural language, the language that I was born with. It was a long times, like a lot of days that I was in my room, like alone. It didn't help that I couldn't use my language still, because I couldn't. Everything was in English, you know. And then this year was just amazing, you know, because Coach was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Talk whatever you want." So I feel like I bonded more with the team just because I could use my language now. coach, there was people walking towards me and they would like turn around and go some other way else just to avoid me. And I didn't understand why in the beginning, because I was just a regular kid from Vegas. But no, they saw me as something else. You know, they saw me as somebody that sold drugs, somebody that did drugs, somebody that didn't care about life. I'm walking down by Bradley, going to the gym. I had my tank top off, just came for practice. So I got a tattoo of my dad that symbolizes my dad and one of my mom. And, you know, I had my tattoos out. And it was the day for the alumni that came and all that. So this older lady and this guy came and like looked at me and whispered to them. Well, the guy whispered to them, I can't believe we have these type of people at our school.
That is some shit.
Me and Mo, we started doing this like way back. Me and Mo, like, sometimes we go to like a view, we go to Rocky View. We just started recently going to Mount Tabor, you know, and we do that just to like basically like energize ourselves, you know, basically to remind us of why are we here, why do we do this, you know, and it's peaceful.
And I think that's what's sad is like people don't know that part about you. They don't know that like you go places like that and you're like, oh, they're just walking around 82nd at 2 a.m. Like, no, we're going to lookouts and views and night hikes.
But they put a wall in front of them that we can't surpass.
Yeah.
Just the way that somebody looks at you, that you can tell that they're just judging you from the beginning.
Yeah, like afraid to like approach you, you know, things in that nature. Since then, I've kind of been like kind of closed off, you know, kind of keeping to myself. They honestly like, they really think we have it easy because they think like, oh, teachers don't pass us like that. Honestly, like we probably have the hardest schedule, you know, so it's like, it's difficult. Like it's like we always have to make up work every time because of games, practices, and all that. Because it's like our day starts from like 6 a.m. in the morning till like probably like 11 at night, and we're not going to bed until like midnight. So
people think that it's really easy to be a student athlete. You know, on the other hand, I have to work. I have to go to school, do homework. I have to do basically what any other regular student does, plus soccer and work. So it's just the schedule is like full. You know, so it's not easy. And people think that it is, you know. It's hard, you know, because, for example, Mo, he's known for playing basketball. I'm known for playing soccer. So it's really hard because you have like the whole eyes on you. You know, like if you like slick and do the wrong move, everybody will judge you. It's really weird to say this, bro, but I feel really more comfortable when I'm back home than I'm here. Just because back there I don't get judged. I don't get judged back there. Here I come in, and as soon as I step out of my car, everything is like different.
honestly, like for me, like I was raised differently, and like especially like my mom, like she's pretty much like my backbone, you know, and like she's like my best friend, so she pretty much tells me like how I should handle things and like how you should adapt to wherever you at, especially like in your environment. So like at first, like I used to care about what people think about me, like when I was younger, but now like I'm older, I really don't pay no mind to it because it's just stressing you out, you know. So it's just better to live free.
You know, my mom and my dad raised me to be a fighter, to not give up, to show who I am, you know, to embrace my last name. And so far that's what I've done. You know, never held back, never given up on anybody, and just kept moving forward. And it was crazy, right? We had a lot of people come up to us and like, oh dude, like I should have talked to you since the beginning. I never knew you were like this and like that.
Yeah, I've heard comments like, oh, like you're intimidated, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
yeah. People like
every time.
People like, oh dude, like I don't even want to say anything to you because I feel like you want to kill somebody every day that I see you. And I'm like that. I'm like, dude, I'm like a soft teddy bear when you get to know me. You like try to step like in their shoes and see what they went through before you start talking about your side.
This is like you gotta respect everyone regardless of how the way they treat you, you know. So you just keep being you. So.
They don't want to see basically where the dark is. They always want to stay where the sun is, if that makes sense. There was plenty of times where I've been pointing a gun to, and that's just how life is. You can't really change it. You just have to move forward. make the best of it. I was like, all right, bro. I was like, give me your advice on this thing, you know. And he was like, well, I would do this and this and that. And I was like, okay. And the way that he like gave me the advice was just like, if I had all of that he had.
Yeah.
You get me? And I told him, I was like, well, what if I don't have this? He's like, whoa. Like, he kind of looked at me, he's like, why wouldn't you have that?
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, and I'm like, well, dude, like, I wasn't raised the way you were. Everybody sees us like, oh, like, the big hot shot of the soccer, and then, like, the big hot shot of the basketball team. And it's
I ain't
like,
no hot shot.
no, like, we're not no hot shots. Like, we're just trying to play the sport that we love, you know?
I'm just Mo.
Yeah, I'm just Manny, you know?
And like, be your own person, be comfortable in your own skin. That's one of the main reasons why I'm majoring in psychology, so I can work with kids, be able to like mentor them so they can be comfortable in their own skin, you know? And I want them to be the best version of themselves, because I feel like that's really important, because I want them to be able to like pay it forward. So, and I think honestly, like, if I do that, then like, I feel good about that more than anything else. Like, basketball is basketball, you know, at the end of the day, but it's beyond that, you know. Like, you got to be able to like give a helping hand out to someone that's struggling. So honestly, what I love about my coach is that, especially like, you know, like in businesses and like the music industry and like the sports industry, like, people are always showing love for each other. That's the one thing I really love about our culture, and that's pretty dope, you know. And that's really unique. You don't really see that, you know, especially like with other races. It was like what Coach's wife was saying. The other
Yeah.
race was just like,
Coach Sarah, yeah.
she was
Coach
just
Sarah.
like, oh, like, would you rather be with the basketball player, or would you rather be with someone like who he is, you know, like actually like from his heart, you know? And I was just like, that's really deep, you know. And it's something that I wish like people like kind of forget about me as an athlete. I just want people to just know me for who I am, you know. Because,
yeah,
I don't know. I think I'm a mellow dude, you know.
What do you really want to be?
What a lot of people don't know about is that they think that Columbus was the one that founded this land, but it really was the Native Americans that found him. So that's a big part of why we like to be called Native Americans instead of Indians.
You know, like the white man, you know, taking credit for that. Can you kind of talk about how Native Americans have been like represented in media, and how, as a Native American woman, like how that makes you feel?
So when it comes to media, like all you see, like especially around Halloween, is definitely the wearing of the tribal whatever, like, and it like every costume that is like supposed to be Native American does not look anything like our traditional like actual dresses and things like that. So like it's really like we're really represented in a false way. Face painting wise, we only face paint when we are doing a ceremony or like a powwow or like anything to do with like deeply in our culture. A lot that you see, like the feathers or like the band, like the headbands that they wear, nothing like ours. We do everything traditional bead. So everything that we wear, like our regalia is what we call it, is all beaded. And either like beads, shells, or like buckskin. It's just like all really old school. When on the media you hear a lot of people call us savages, and that's something that a lot of us don't like at all. Like, cause the tribe that I come from, which is the Nez Perce tribe, we were like pretty much like the huge, like the largest tribe in the Pacific Northwest when the Lewis and Clark expedition was going on. And they referred to us as very peaceful and helping, because that's still how we are today. We don't ever want to hurt anyone. We just like to educate people on where we come from, who we are, and what we stand for. Being called like a savage, or they call me a redskin, or like a dirty Indian, like stuff like that. Coming from the res, a lot of people think like, oh, you're gonna be an alcoholic, you're gonna be a dropout, stuff like that. And like, yeah, like my family like did go through those parts. Like I do have dropouts in my family. I do have alcoholics in my family, but that doesn't define me. Like I will tell them, like they'll throw in my face, well, because I did come from a single parent household. They'll throw in my face like, well, your dad walked out on you. Like, does that happen to a lot of natives? And I'm like, well,
It could happen to anyone though,
yeah,
regardless of
exactly.
your color
And I'll
or
just be
race.
like,
Yeah.
and I just be like, well, do you see like white kids with single parent households? Because I do too. Because I'm full blood. I'm just half Nez Perce, half Colville, and they're like a lighter type of. It's crazy because like I'll go down to my Nez Perce tribe and I'll be too light for them, but when I go up to my Colville tribe, I'll be too dark for them. So I'm just like stuck in. It's almost like a mix, you know.
No,
like,
it's funny.
light
That's
skin
why I
Colville.
no, that's why I laughed because I was like, that sounds like me. Like,
Yeah,
you're like
yeah,
too dark for this, too light for this.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Hearing you say that, like the whole like light skin props thing, like that's crazy. I
Yeah,
had no
yeah.
idea that like.
That's what I always like when I was talking to Celeste, because she's like, you know how she's white and black. She's always like, God, I hate it. You know, she was like, I'm too white to go to the black side. I'm too black to go to the white side. She's like, I'm stuck in the middle. I was like, you know, it's crazy because I am too. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm a full blood native, but I'm enrolled two different tribes.
Yeah.
And they're complete opposite. So like the Colvilles, they're like dark hair, you know, but light skin, green eyes, light brown eyes. Where the Nez Perces are like my mom, completely dark, long hair and dark hair. But like I go down to like where I live and like all the people around me are just darker and I'm just like, alright, cool. But I go up to the Colville res sometimes to visit my family up there and I'm like, oh, you make me look dark. You know, it's just like that.
It is a reality that this is part of our reality. This is part of our physical lived experience.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that gives me a lot more freedom to acknowledge that to myself and not consider myself a bad person when I notice those biases and prejudices in myself, but rather take note of them. So I think it's essential that we, and for me, when I realized that bias and prejudice is a natural occurrence, that gave me a lot more freedom, I felt like, to engage even the conversation on race and diversity and different things, because I didn't have to, when I noticed those things in myself, I didn't have to label myself as a bad person.
Right. Do you believe that bias and prejudice are something that are always purposefully acquired, or do you think that it's something unconscious?
I would say it's almost always subconscious. Not that our actions are subconscious; those aren't. But taking in bias and prejudice. As a parent, my job is to teach my kids how to perceive the world and how to stay safe. Both explicitly and implicitly, I can teach them that someone is not safe. I can teach them explicitly, this person is not safe. Or I can also implicitly say, you know, hey, we don't know everybody, and so when you don't know someone, you don't want to trust them fully because you don't know them. So I'm still sending a message that says, you know, everybody's not safe. How I perceive my social environment, I'm naturally, both explicitly and implicitly, going to be teaching my children my views of the world.
Right, including biases and prejudices.
Including my biases and my prejudices. When we're talking about race, prejudice, bias, even if I'm not directly and overtly saying this people group is bad, or is out to get you, or are inherently not trustworthy, even if I'm not explicitly saying those types of things, I may still be sending a message to my kid that implies that they are different from me, they may not be as safe as my people are safe. For instance, take, you know, the last number of generations of African American families who come from a family that was enslaved. Well, through all those generations, you have parents teaching their kids how to be safe, right? So that's not something that gets fixed overnight.
Right.
I mean, obviously, even with the abolition of slavery, race problems in America did not get fixed overnight.
Clearly, yes.
Like, you can't change the messages we've been teaching people how to rationalize, moralize, and justify their behavior in a generation. You just can't, because parents are passing down those perceptions and those ways of seeing the world and how to stay safe and how to engage with other people. One thing that maintaining bias and prejudice and not doing the work of deconstructing that, one thing that does is that it continues to give us an oversimplified and incorrect picture of the world around us. It's not true. Bias and prejudice is very specifically built on incomplete information. And incomplete information is never fully true. Biblically, we are given a mandate to love God, and the other commandment is like it, and meaning it is just like it, which is loving other people. We have the doctrine of the Imago Dei, that all people are created in the image of God. We have a huge theological problem if we are not fully acknowledging other people in the Imago Dei, or not fully engaging love for other people. That's problematic for our theology. Well, I don't think we have the luxury of maintaining our bias and our prejudice if we are going to follow hard after the type of love Christ wants us to have for people.
One of the things that we want to talk about, especially to our classes, like a lot of people are like, well, I'm not racist, therefore I don't really need to be a part of these conversations because I don't think of people that way. And so helping people understand that there is something more subliminal than just racism that is hindering in our connections and relations with the people around us. If they're not confronted, they're going to be hindering our relationships with people in our community. So how can you speak to that?
Well, you said that very well. If we don't deconstruct our biases and our prejudices, they will still impact our interactions. I think that in and of itself is motivation enough to be like, I don't want that to happen, you know? And again, I don't need to feel super self-deprecating. I don't need to be super self-deprecating about the fact that it does happen. Doesn't make me a bad person. I am a social being, and this is part of my socialization, right? I'm not trying to say that that means that white people shouldn't be intervening and shouldn't be helping, but I do think we have to be very careful not to perpetuate an image in society and an image in our own minds that we are the capable, intelligent crew who is out to save everybody.
Right.
Because we are so stuck on this idea that we are not bad people and we love everybody equally, we're not doing the work of the next step to say, well, wait a minute, maybe these issues are way more complex than I'm giving them credit for. Maybe I can't just love everybody equally, because maybe bias and prejudice are a shortcut that my brain naturally takes to categorize people with all these messages I've been taught from society and my family and whatever. If I'm gonna really love people well, I have to take the time to break those down.
How, as majority race, as white people, how can we engage in this conversation in a way that is advocating for people of color and marginalized people, while giving them the power and them the platform without both igniting in ourselves, you know, this inflating our egos and also giving ourselves platform to say, I'm the one capable because of my race.
That's a complex question.
Yes.
I think what is difficult to hold in tension is the fact that we are not the saviors and we still matter. If I as a white person don't make race my issue, and by making it my issue I mean learning about it, taking the time to have an opinion about it, processing it, learning about it some more, learning about it some more, learning about it some more, and engaging it. If I don't make it my issue in those ways, then I perpetuate the system and I do nothing to disrupt the system, then the system doesn't change.
Right.
So I think for me as a white person, my hope is that I told you before that like being true and realistic matters a lot to me. I hope that I can have a realistic perception of society, my culture, my specific Christine Martin's culture. Egalitarian, white, Pentecostal, evangelical, female,
mother.
Yeah, like all my identities, right? I need to be engaging myself in the issue and then able to engage it in my spheres and in my places of influence and making it my issue.
Right.
Not making it my issue to go stand on a soapbox and take more power away from more people and say that I know everything about it and any of that's not what I mean by making it my issue. I mean I need to engage this issue in order for something to change.
Right.
So that made me feel like I had the freedom and even the responsibility to make this my issue instead of just go, oh man, yeah, I really care about that and I sure don't want to screw that up, so I'm gonna let people who know what they're doing deal with it. You know?
Often I think it's hard for white people to feel like they have, or they should, have any sort of responsibility in this conversation because it's, you know, this isn't their experience. They don't have to be a part of this conversation every day. People of color live this, and so they have to deal with this as part of their identity. So I've been told on multiple occasions that one of the ways that white people can be engaged and one of their responsibilities is to educate other white people. Where do you think on that idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, and I still feel like I'm in my baby phases of learning, is what I feel like. I think that that's a really appropriate way for me to engage this subject in my spheres of influence. There's multiple ways, but I think a lot of my job is to engage this in my white communities.
Right.
You know, and there's other things that are part of my job. One of which is not to stay isolated in my white communities. That's a different type. That would be a different type of lack of engagement. Is to just perpetuate, you know, my own experience and not then learn anything different because I'm still just surrounding myself with people who are exactly like me.
One of the biggest changes I want to see is like making everyone feel included, because like there's like times when I'm like I can feel included but then I can't, and it's, I guess that's just the whole like the biracial thing because I'm black and white, so like sometimes I can fit in with, you know, different sides, and I just want I want it to just be like one whole group instead of like you can always feel like a separation or like tension whenever you're with a certain side. So a pretty good example is like Christmas for me, because my parents are separated, so and my dad's side is black, my mom's side is white, and when I go to my mom's side, it's like it just feels a little awkward it feels more awkward if I'm going from my dad's to my mom's. And then I go to my mom's and I have to just, you know, put on kind of a front in a way, just because I don't want people to judge me if I talk a certain way or if like I wear a chain out or something like that. And so like right when I walk in the room, if I have sweats on, a beanie, then my grandma and my aunts are looking at me weird. And so but if I go to my dad's, it's like, oh, it's just regular. I think the worst part about it is it's like feeling like an outcast. So I'm the only black, or I'm the only person there with a black like skin color or like black heritage or something like that. So you can always feel like you're out of place, and that's like what I kind of want to like bring back to like the whole Multnomah side is like sometimes I feel like I'm out of place, not because people aren't being nice, but you can just feel the tension and feel like the awkwardness when you walk in the room.
Feel like you're an outsider.
Yeah. I feel like professors are just like, oh, that's another black kid. If you think about habits that we have in like our daily lives, like we wake up, we brush our teeth, we wash our face, that type of stuff, we can always change those. And I feel like with bias, like, and all that type of stuff, you can change it.
I think step one is like recognizing that you have a negative bias, and like you said, you can't help someone who wants to be helped. I don't think that changes can be made until like it's recognized that there needs to be a change. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like in that case, it's a whole thing of just swallowing your pride. Because if you, like, you can change, but you have to like be able to like recognize that like you're wrong.
Yeah.
And like it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to like, you know, make a judgment. Okay, I shouldn't have made that judgment. And like we do that every day. I do that every day. But when but recognizing it is like is the best solution to all of this.
Yeah.
So everybody makes judgments about people every day. Especially like on the basketball court, if it's just like if it is white and then versus the dude's black, you're gonna just be like, oh, the black guy's better.
Yeah.
And that's just like human. That's just what we do. And so
yeah. People admire like you said, like finding beauty in color, you know, like and people do that. They tan. They think that like our skin, you know, because it isn't white or like the majority that it's beautiful, but it's like, why can't our minds and our hearts and our souls be like something of beauty also that people like
figure out who I am first, not like what I am.